Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'm going to be showing you how to crochet your own cushion cover just like this one. As you can see, it is beautifully colourful. It will brighten any space, and the best thing is this is super beginner friendly and it works up really fast. So this is also a great gift idea if you've left your Christmas gifting to the last minute. This works up really quickly. You can probably make it in 1 to 2 days. So you could definitely pump out a few of these before Christmas if you wanted to. So basically this cushion cover is made up of 4 granny squares and 2 back panels. It has an opening in the back so you can insert and remove your cushion insert, which is great because that means you can wash your cushion cover, which obviously is a plus. So for this cushion I used a 17-inch cushion insert, but in saying that I probably could have used a smaller one because as you can see it is very full, which of course is not a bad thing, but if you don't want yours to be so full and so plump, I suppose, you could definitely use a smaller cushion insert. But anyway, if you are interested in learning how to make this, please just keep on watching. Okay, so to get started, you're going to need 4 different colors of yarn. I'm using Maker's A Blend Moment Cotton Acrylic Blend today in the colors Citrine, Garnet, Rhodonite, and Carnelian. We're just going to be working with one color at a time to create our front panels, so working in squares. And you will of course need a crochet hook. I'm using a 4mm today. We're going to be starting off with a magic circle. This is my favorite way to start off granny squares, but you can start with a chain 4 and joining to create a loop if you like. We're then going to chain 3, so 1, 2, 3, and that will count as our very first double crochet. Now we're going to double crochet 15 in the center of our magic circle. So just working into the center of that loop there. So working 15 double crochets into that loop, not including that chain 3 that we just completed. So we want to have a total of 16 stitches at the end of this. And like I said, the chain 3 does count as our first double crochet. Okay, so once you have a total stitch count of 16, we're just going to pull that end to tighten up the center there. And then we just want to slip stitch into the top of that chain 3 to join our round. So just like that, and you should have a circle. Something that looks a little bit like this. Now what we want to do is chain 3, and again this will count as our first double crochet. Then we want to complete another 2 double crochet in that very same stitch. So going into that exact same stitch that we just joined into and completing another 2 double crochet. Just like that. And that will mark our very first corner. And you'll see what I mean by that in just a moment. What we want to do now is 1 double crochet in the next 3 stitches. So 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to do 3 double crochet in that next stitch. So 1, 2, 3 double crochet all in the same stitch, and then we're just repeating what we've just done. So 1 double crochet in the next 3 stitches. Just like that. And now we are completing 3 double crochet in the next stitch. So 1, 2, 3, all in that same stitch. Now again we are completing 1 double crochet in the next 3 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, and again 3 double crochet in the next stitch. 1, 2, 3. Now you should only have 3 double crochet remaining, so we're just doing 1 double crochet in the last 3 stitches. And you should now be back to where we began. So to join the round, we're doing the exact same thing as we just did in the previous round, and slip stitching into the top of that very first chain 3 to join the round, and you should have something that looks a little bit like this. Now obviously it is looking like a circle at the moment. That is totally normal. It will turn into a square as we progress. So now what we're doing is chaining 3, 1, 2, 3, and working 3 double crochet into that very next stitch. So again, that first chain 3 will count as our first double crochet, but now we're moving on to that next stitch, which will be the center stitch of our very first lot of 3 double crochet. So going into the next stitch with 3 double crochets. Now we are doing 1 double crochet in the next 5 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you should see now that we are up to that center stitch of the next lot of 3 double crochet, which will mark our corner. So we want to go into that next stitch with another 3 double crochet. And now we're doing the exact same as what we just did, so going in with 1 double crochet in the next 5 stitches. So again, we should be up to that center stitch of the next lot of 3 double crochets, which of course marks our corner. So we're going in to that center stitch with another 3 double crochets. And again, we're going into the next 5 stitches with 1 double crochet. And again, we should be up to that center stitch of the next lot of 3 double crochets. So going in, of course, with another 3 double crochets. And now you should have 4 stitches remaining, because remember we counted that first chain 3 at the beginning of our round as a double crochet. So you now should have 4 stitches remaining, and we're just going in to each of those 4 stitches with 1 double crochet. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we are slip stitching into the top of that chain 3 to join the round. And you should have something that's looking a little bit like that. Okay, so now what we're doing is chaining 3 once again, and we're going into that next stitch with 1 double crochet, and then we will be up to that next center stitch of that lot of 3 double crochets. So we're going into that center stitch with another 3 double crochets. And we're just going to repeat this process all the way around. So I won't do this row with you all. I'm sure you've probably got the hang of it by now. If not, feel free to rewind this video and go back and watch it again. But basically, you just want to double crochet in every stitch until you get to that center stitch of that lot of 3 double crochets. And then you want to complete another 3 double crochet into that center stitch. and just repeating that all the way around until we're back to where we began. Okay, so I will meet you back here at the end of this round. Okay, so here I am at the end of round 4. We are now doing exactly what we have been doing for the previous round and chaining 3. We're then completing 1 double crochet in the next stitch, 1 double crochet in the next stitch, and then we should be up to that center stitch of that lot of 3 double crochets, and we are completing 3 double crochets into that center stitch. And we're just, again, repeating that all the way around until we are back where we began, making sure we complete 3 double crochets in the center of every center stitch of the lot of 3 double crochets we completed in the previous round. So I'm going to leave you to it now, but this is basically what you should have by the end of it. You want to complete a total of 9 rounds, which is what I have here. Obviously, you could do more or less rounds depending on the size of the cushion that you're making, or the cushion cover, I should say. So you can alter this to suit the size that you're making, but if you're copying mine exactly and you want yours to look exactly the same as mine and be the exact same size, then you want to complete a total of 9 rounds. You're then going to repeat this exact same process with all of the other colors, so you should have a total of 4 different colors altogether. So these are what my squares look like. These are the colors that I'm going to be using for my cushion, as you guys would have seen. So go ahead now, finish off all these squares, and then once you're done, come back here and I will show you what is next. Okay, so once you have completed all your squares like I have here, you're going to figure out exactly how you want them to be laid out. So I'm going to lay mine out in this order. So this is what my cushion cover will look like at the front, because these squares are going to create our front panel for our cushion cover. Now I just want to mention that I would recommend blocking your squares before joining them together. It's just going to give them a nicer shape. Believe it or not, these actually have been blocked, but they've been in storage for a little bit, so they've started to curl back up again. But I do recommend blocking your squares just to make sure that they are all the same size and they're all going to match up nicely. But you don't have to. This is an optional step, but I would recommend it if you want your squares to be nice and easy to join. Okay, so I'm just going to take these 2 squares, which I've got positioned next to each other. Now what you want to do is making sure the right side is facing up. I'll just show you what the right side looks like. So this is my right side. As you can see, it looks really nice and neat. And then if you flip it over, you can see that the back side looks a little bit different. So this is not the side that I want to be showing on the outside of my cushion cover. So for me, this is my right side and this is my wrong side. So with the right sides facing up, we are now going to place our squares on top of each other, so the right sides are facing each other. So you want the right sides together. Then I'm going to take my yarn. You can use any color, because the way we're joining these squares, it's going to be invisible. You're not even going to be able to see it, so it doesn't really matter what color you use to join your squares together. But I'm just going to start with a slip knot and popping that onto my hook. Again, I'm just using the 4mm hook that I used to create my squares. And now we're going to join them together. So the technique I like to use is the back loop join, I believe it's called. Don't quote me on that, I could be wrong. But basically, we are going to be taking that front loop there. So finding that corner stitch, so remember we completed those lots of 3 double crochets. We want to find that center stitch on both of our squares so they're matching up nicely. And we want to insert our hook through that center stitch, but going through that front loop only, just like that. And then on the back square, we want to go through that back loop, so the loop that is furthest away from us. So that loop there. Again, making sure you're going through that center stitch on both squares. Now all we're going to do is slip stitch to join our squares together. So very basic, we're just slip stitching like that to join our squares. And now we're going to continue that process all the way along this first edge. So going into the next stitch, but going through that stitch that's closest to us. And then on the second square, we're going through the loop that is furthest away from us. Just like that. And then we're slip stitching to join. And this technique is going to give us a beautiful invisible seam, so you won't even be able to see it, which is amazing. So again, we're going into that next stitch, the loop that is closest to us, then going through the back square, we're going into that loop that is furthest away from us and slip stitching to join. So I'll show you one more time. So the next stitch, we're going through that loop that's closest to us, and then on the back square, we're going through that loop that is furthest away from us. Just like that, and slip stitching to join. Now I'm just going to repeat this process all the way across until we get to this second corner space. So I will do that off camera and I'll meet you back here. Okay, so here I am at the end of that first edge. As you can see, that's what the join looks like. It's beautiful and neat. If you turn it over, this is what it looks like on the right side. So as you can see, a totally invisible seam, and it looks absolutely stunning. Okay, so you should have just joined into the stitch just before that corner stitch, because now we are going to add in our next two squares. So I'm just going to pop that down for a moment, and we're going to take our next two squares and again placing them right sides together just like that. We are going to join these to our first set of squares. So now what we're going to do is find that center stitch on our second set of squares, and again using the same technique, we're going through that stitch that's closest to us, and then on the back square we're going through the stitch that is furthest from us, and using a slip stitch to join. So just like that, exactly like we have been. And now we are going to be working along this edge here. So we're repeating the exact same process as we just did for this first set of squares, but now we're working along the edge of our second set of squares. So again, going into the loop that's closest to us, and then finding the loop that is furthest from us and slip stitching to join. So again, just repeating that process all the way to the next corner. Okay, so here I am at the end of that edge. I am now up to that center stitch, which I am going into this time because this is the edge, the outer edge, I guess, of our cushion. So we want those corners to be joined together. So this is what you should have so far, something that looks a little bit like that. If I lay these out, you'll be able to see that they are all joined together down this way. Now what we can do is fasten off our yarn and just tie that off, making sure it is nice and secure. And now I will flip these over just to show you what it's looking like. So as you can see, like I said, it doesn't matter what color yarn you use because this is a completely invisible seam, which we love. So obviously I use the orange yarn and you can't see any of the orange yarn through these colors, which is amazing. So now what we need to do, of course, is join along these edges now. So folding them in this way, we're now going to be repeating that exact same process, but we're going to be starting at this corner and joining along this seam. So again, we're just starting with a slip knot and popping that onto our hook. We are now going to find that center stitch of this corner here, going through that loop that is closest to us, and then finding that center stitch on the second square and going into the loop that is furthest from us. And again, we're just slip stitching through both layers to join. So we're just repeating that process all the way until we get to this center section. Once we do get to the middle here, I do need to show you a little bit of an extra step, but I will meet you after I have joined this edge all the way up to the center space. Okay, so here I am at that center space now. Now I'm just going to go through the very last stitch and join that last corner together. Now what we want to do is just chain one, and that's just going to give us a little bit of extra space to get over that join that we have already completed previously. And then we're going to find that very next corner space, go through that stitch, find the next corner space, go through that stitch, slip stitch to join, and now we can continue on along the final edge, which will be this edge here. So once you are up to this corner, I will meet you back here and I'll show you what's next. All right, here I am at the end of this join, and now I'm going to fasten off my yarn. So just cutting that. And again, making sure it is nice and secure. And now we'll be able to see exactly what our cushion is going to look like. So you should have something that looks a little bit like this. If you are like me and you're finding that it is a little bit out of shape, or if you didn't block your squares before we joined them, you can go ahead and block after you've joined. So you could block this now, which I am probably going to do, to be honest. I might just give it a quick little steam block because it's not sitting flat, as you can see, but that is totally fine. Blocking it will definitely help flatten it out. So if yours is looking like mine, go ahead and block it. Come back here and I'll show you what's next. We are next going to be moving on to the back panel. So if you are ready to move on to your back panel, what we want to do is figure out exactly how many stitches we need to chain up to begin our back panel. So basically you want your back panel to be the same width as your front panel, of course. So for me, my squares were 20 centimeters along each edge. So for me, I'm going to chain up 40 stitches because I've got a total of 40 stitches going across here and I want it to be the exact same size. So whatever your stitch count is along the edge of your squares, that's how much you want to chain up for your back panel. So for me, I want to chain up 40 like I mentioned. So I'm just starting with a slip knot, popping that onto my hook, and I'm going to chain 40 stitches. Okay, so I've just chained my 40 stitches. What I'm going to do now is chain an extra 2. So I'll have 42 chains in total, because now what we're going to do is skip those first 3 chain stitches and we're completing our first double crochet into the 4th chain from our hook. So yarning over, skipping those first 3, so 1, 2, 3, finding that 4th stitch and going into that stitch with a double crochet. Now again, our chain 3 that we skipped at the beginning will count as our very first double crochet. So just keep that in mind when you are counting your stitches. And now what we're going to do is complete 1 double crochet in every chain stitch until we get to the end of the row. So very easy, just 1 double crochet in every stitch all the way to the end. Okay, here I am at the end of row 1. Now what I'm going to do is chain 3, so 1, 2, 3, and turn my work, and we're now going to be working back along this way. So that chain 3 will count as our first double crochet, so we want to skip that very first stitch and then we want to go into the second stitch. So again with a double crochet, and we're just completing 1 double crochet in every stitch all the way across. And we're basically just going to be working in rows now until we have reached our desired length. Now you want your back panels to be long enough that you've got two panels that slightly overlap. So technically there is going to be a little bit of extra length in there compared to your front panel, and that is totally fine because we want them to overlap so you can get your cushion in there, but there's not a big gaping hole at the back. And I will show you what I mean by that in just a second. But basically now we just want to work in rows, completing one double crochet in every stitch all the way to the end of the row. So once you have completed your panels, this is what they should look like. So I've got one pink panel here, and then I've got my orange panel because I chose to do two different colors. So what I mean by they should slightly overlap is once they're joined to your front panel, you should have them slightly overlapping, a little bit like that. So then you can get your cushion in there, but even though your cushion's in there, you're not going to have this big hole where you can see your cushion through it. So if you're following along with me and completing the exact same size as me, I completed a total of 21 rows for my back panel. So obviously I want to make 2 of those. So go ahead and do that, and I will meet you back here and we will complete the final step, which is joining our back panel to our front panel. Okay, so once you have finished your 2 back panels, you should have something that looks a little bit like this. I have gone ahead now and steamed and blocked my front panel, so as you can see, it's looking a lot better. So now what we want to do is join our front panel to our back panels, and that's the final step of this cushion. So what we first want to do is make sure the right side of our front panel is facing up, and then we want to take our 2 back panels, which should look exactly the same on both sides, so it doesn't really matter what the wrong side and the right side is, and we want to just lay those on top of our front panel. So it should look something like that. Now what we're going to do is join all around these edges. So taking your yarn, again, it does not matter what color you use, you won't really be able to see it. I'm just sticking with the orange because that's what I've been using to join this whole time. Now what we're going to do is start off with a slip stitch. And we can get rid of one panel for now because we're just going to join this one at the minute, and we're going to insert our hook through that corner space of our back panel, and then finding that center stitch in the front panel, so that center of our corner in our front panel, we're just going to insert our hook through there, going through both loops this time. This is not a special joining technique or anything, this is very, very basic. So then we're just going to slip stitch to join. Okay, and we're just going to slip stitch all the way across until we get to this corner. So I'll show you the first few, but basically everything should line up really nicely because we've got the same stitch count on the front panel and the same stitch count on the back panel. So everything should technically line up very well and be super duper easy. So as you can see, I'm just going through the front panel and the back panel and slip stitching to join, going into every stitch and lining everything up nicely. Just like that. Okay, so we're just going to repeat that all the way to the end of this edge, and I'll meet you back here. Okay, so here I am at the end of that first edge. Now we are going to be working down along this edge, but what I'm going to do is bring back the second panel because now we want to secure this in place. So once we get to here, we can join both of them at the same time, rather than having to do them separately. You can do this however you like. I'm going to use a couple of stitch markers just to help hold these panels in place So basically you want to line them up so the edges here line up nicely, and then you can secure this in place just so we know where to start joining. It doesn't have to be perfect, it doesn't have to be exact, but you just want to have a rough idea of where you're going to start joining both back panels at the same time. And it'll only really be for a few stitches until we're past this point where they overlap. Okay, so now we're just going to be continuing that exact same process, slip stitching all around the edge to join. The only difference with this edge is because it is the side of our back panels, we'll be working through the ends of the rows rather than actual stitches, which you will be working through for the front panel. But everything will work exactly the same. You're still slip stitching through both layers to join. The only difference is instead of going through an actual stitch, you're going through the end of the row. So everything won't line up perfectly like it was on the first edge, but that is totally okay. The most important thing is to just make sure you have your stitches spaced evenly, because you don't want to have big holes in your seam, because then you'll be able to see your cushion insert through your cushion cover, and we don't want that. So you'll see here that I've now reached my stitch marker. So what I'm going to do is, leaving that stitch marker in just for now to help secure it, I'm going to be going through that new panel, so the second back panel, the first back panel, and also the front panel. So you want to be going through all three panels to make sure we're joining them all together. Once you've done that first stitch or the first couple of stitches, you can remove your stitch marker because it's now nice and secure. It's not going to go anywhere. So now we're just going to continue that process, going through all three layers until we're past that section where the two back panels are overlapping. And we're basically just repeating this process until we get to the next corner. So I'm going to go ahead and complete that, and I will meet you at the next corner. Okay, here I am at the next corner. I'm now going to be working along this next edge. This one will be nice and easy because we are just going into the stitches again like we did for the first edge. So I'm now going to go and complete all the seaming, so I will finish it off. We're basically just repeating what we've already done, so I'm not going to show you that on camera again, but basically we're just seaming all around the edge, so down this edge and then back up this edge until we get back to the point where we started from, and then our cushion is pretty much complete. We do need to sew in some ends, but I will meet you back here at the end and we will look at the finished result. Okay, here I am at the end of my seaming. So I have now seamed all four edges. So now I'm going to fasten off my yarn. And once again, making sure that's nice and secure. I also like to go in and just tie my ends together, just to make sure it is super duper secure. And now we can go in and sew in the ends. I'm not going to do that, but once you've done that, we can flip our cover right side out and we'll be able to see exactly what it's looking like. So just pushing the corners out. So this is what your cover should be looking like once it's done. So now we can take our cushion insert and insert it into our cover. Here we go. Alrighty, once you have squeezed your cushion insert into your cushion, you should be left with something that looks a little bit like this. I am so happy with how it's turned out. If we flip it over, you'll be able to see that because we did leave that overlapping section, even though this cushion is super full, we cannot see the insert through the back, which is amazing. That's what we want. If you did enjoy this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and of course, as always, if you haven't already, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and turn on your notifications so you will be notified of all my future videos. In the meantime, if you want to come and hang out with me in the Talk Yarny to Me Facebook group, there will be a link in the description down below, so please feel free to join. But until next time, guys, stay safe, be kind, and I will see you next time. Bye!